Why do the Mavericks have to move with a sense of urgency this summer as we have an honest discussion about the state of the Dallas Mavericks? All that and more coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We, of course, are DLLS Mavs. Appreciate you joining us here on this Monday afternoon. Why the Mavericks have to move with a sense of urgency this summer as we have an honest conversation about where the Mavericks are as they look to improve after a disappointing season. Appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe while you're here. And you can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Search DLLS Mavs, give it a 5-star rating, and write a review for it while you're there. Hopefully you had a good weekend like I did, gentlemen. How was your weekend? Good to see you.
It was wonderful.
Good,
yeah.
Good.
It was great. Saw the family, went to a concert. What more could you ask for?
Stars won Game 7.
Stars won Game 7
over the weekend as well.
Oh, my God.
They're on their way to take on the Winnipeg Jets in the Western Conference semifinals. Our DLLS Stars crew, fantastic, historic weekend for them. Shout out to Mikko Rantanen, who had a hell of a Game 7 against his former team.
Thank you, Mikko.
Against the Colorado Avalanche. If you're looking for the best Stars podcast in the game, it is at DLLS Stars with the guys Owen Newkirk, Craig Ludwig, Sean Shapiro, and Sam Nessel. They were all over all weekend with watch-alongs galore. So fantastic stuff from our Stars crew, and congratulations to the Stars moving on to the Western Conference semifinals. A team that's looking to get some playoff success of their own going into the next year, of course, are your Dallas Mavericks. After what was a disappointing 39-43 year, the NBA lottery is coming up a week from today. We will know where the Mavericks will be picking in the 2025 NBA draft, where they own the number 11 pick right now. Their odds to get all the way up to number 1 to capture the flag are at 1.8%, but they've got some business to handle. But yet, over the weekend, we had, of course, some conversations last week about what the state of the Mavericks were and what we may feel like the team is. And our guy, Bobby Carella, had some, kind of a throwaway comment. It was, hey, man, I don't know if the Mavericks necessarily make the postseason. And apparently, that set Mavericks Twitter ablaze. And so we got to have an honest discussion about the state of the Mavericks because, Bobby, there's a lot that this team has to address. We know that they believe that defense wins championships, but at the same time, there is significant improvement that this team has to make. And where do they go from here to begin that?
Yeah, to be fair, it was just like a little grenade at the end of a segment. So I was just kind of like saying it, and I probably should have explained the reasoning a little, in general.
Well, here's your opportunity right now.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because as the lottery is 1 week from today, and after that, everything just starts happening so quickly in the NBA. The lottery is a week from today. A few weeks after that the week after that is the combine. That is the same week, whatever. And then not long after that is the draft, and then the week after that is free agency. The week after that is summer league, and then you're pretty much in training camp. Boom,
yeah.
It's just happening. So. The time to prepare, the time to plan, the time to evaluate. That's what's going on in the league right now among teams that aren't making changes to, GM and coaching staff and everything. Like if you're bringing back the group, then you're looking at what went wrong and you're trying to assess how you can improve upon that. And there are plenty of concerns for me going into next season that I feel like the Mavs, I hope the Mavs address. And ultimately at the root of all of this, that is the truth. I would love the Mavs to go 82-0. The Mavs are a big, 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 big part of my life. So whenever I say I'm not sure that they're even going to make the play-in next year, that is not coming from a place of hatred or scorned ex-lover because I just miss Luka so much or whatever. I've been here long before Luka, and I'll be here long after Luka's been retired. I'm a Mavs guy. But there are three major causes for concern for me that we'll address over the next couple segments. internal improvement and internal struggles that they're facing, tactical issues with their current team as it stands, and then third, financial constraints that they are facing. The Mavs finished 10th this year. They need to finish at least 10th again next year in order to make the play-in. How can they do it when teams behind them, who are only a few games behind them, are all ostensibly going to get better with the exception of maybe Phoenix? I mean, who even knows what's going on out there? I want to start internally. Kyrie is probably going to miss at least half the season next year, if not more. There's a chance that he plays 30 games. There's a chance that's the optimistic outcome. And once he comes back from the injury, whenever that is, whether that's in January, which is like the most optimistic time frame ever, or February, or after the All-Star break, which is a scenario that Tim has laid out on the show, even when he comes back, he's probably not going to be playing back-to-backs. He might not be able to play every game. He might suffer a different kind of injury. You just don't know. January is so far away. So many things could go wrong. So many things could go right too. But I think the safe assumption, the optimistic assumption, is that he's going to miss at least 40 to 50 games next year. Now, without him this year, the Mavs really struggled. They did have some good moments with Brandon Williams playing point guard alongside AD. The Mavs' offensive rating whenever those two were on the floor was pretty good. Granted, a lot of that was against pretty lousy teams. They played a very long stretch against Eastern Conference opponents, and they were able to clean up pretty good there, which is nice. I mean, you play 32 games against the East, but after the All-Star break, the Mavs went 2-11 against the West. They went 1-6 against West teams whenever Kyrie or AD played. They did win one game against a Western Conference team, and both of them played. That was the Houston game. And that is kind of the game that Nico keeps pointing back to, is like, that is the proof of concept. Hopefully it is, but we won't be able to see that until at least January, if not February, if not even March. And that's to say nothing of, obviously, AD's extensive injury history and so on. And so, if you take for granted that with Kyrie and AD, the Mavs will be able to win 60% of their games, that's about a 50% win rate. You're only going to get that duo for a maximum of, let's say, 30 to 35 games next year, if that, which means for the other 50 games, you have to win at least 40% of those, probably, in order to make the play-in. And the Mavs did not win 40% of their games this year without Kyrie or AD. They won many, many, many times worse than that. They were one of the worst teams in the NBA after the All-Star break. They were one of the worst teams in the West, once Kyrie went down in March. And so,
in fact, only 3 players were available for 60 games or more: Spencer Dinwiddie, Klay Thompson, and Najee Marshall.
And Dinwiddie is he might not be here next year, and that's the other thing. The Mavs have to find ways to replace Kyrie's playmaking and scoring output while he's gone. And, we'll get into the financials later, but it's basically the Mavs are looking at having to sign a bunch of players on the minimum. And, Dinwiddie was probably, for as much grief as we gave him this year, Dinwiddie was probably one of the best, if not the best, minimum contract player in the NBA last season. And Brandon Williams will be on what is essentially the minimum next year. And he was pretty good too, but it's hard to find guys that are better than that. And the Mavs need guys that are going to be better than that in order to finish higher in the standings. And so, the minimum market is really competitive too, because generally guys are going to go sign minimums with teams they think they can win a title with. And I feel like there are teams in the West and teams around the league that are going to be in a better position to win the title next year that players would be more likely to sign for. So I
thought they're signed based off their mothers and their fathers.
Oh, well, that's a great point. That is true.
That's a great point.
In this scenario now, I'm not sure if the Mavs would be the dad.
That's right.
It's a tougher situation.
That's a great point.
Mavs aren't mom anymore. All right, Mavs are dad now. And then the last thing on the internal piece, and then I want to toss it to y'all because I've been talking too long, is can the Mavs improve internally? Can guys get better? Well, right now, there are 4 players on the team that are younger than 26. One of them is Max Christie, who can definitely get better. One of them is Derek Lively, who's going to spend most of the summer possibly rehabbing. One is Omax, which the fan base is very torn on Omax. I'm still holding out hope. But one is Omax, and then one is Jaden Hardy, who I'm not even sure is going to be on the team. Now, obviously, the Mavs will have a first-round pick. Maybe it'll be a great one. Maybe it'll be 11 or 12 or 13. Who knows? We'll find out next week. But their odds of guys getting dramatically better over the summer, that gets much lower as guys get older. And so unless one of these younger guys is just going to take a huge leap, then you might not be able to get a lift internally. And that's really important because teams like the Spurs and the Blazers, who've both finished behind you in the standings this year, they're very young, and the Spurs have a lot of picks and a lot of assets, and they're
Mhm.
now in the conversation for players that are going to be in the Hall of Fame, like Giannis and KD. Who knows? That doesn't necessarily mean it'll make them better, but it stands to reason that the Spurs and Blazers will be better outfits next year, and so you have to hold them off as well. Can you do that internally without the chance of signing guys? And so that alone, just the internal problem you're already facing and, potential lack of improvement from around the roster, that alone gives me a lot of cause for concern. There are other things that we'll talk about probably in the next segment, but I want to get y'all's thoughts on at least that part first.
Yeah, this is a hard topic to debate because
A lot of it is projection.
A lot of it is
Sure.
projection. There's no evidence. Dallas, there's 8 teams standing in the NBA right now. 8 teams still alive. 8 teams in the second round of the postseason. Dallas did not beat any of them, but they didn't play any of them with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis did not play one single game against a team that advanced to the second round of the postseason. Now, they had some losses. They beat Houston, but they also lost to the Lakers and the Clippers. Twice with Anthony Davis out there. Obviously, Kyrie wasn't out there. So what you're going to be arguing against is there's a lack of evidence of, so really right now you can believe whatever you want about the Mavericks. But yeah, I remember when Kyrie got hurt, and my opinion then, and I feel like it was the popular opinion at the time, was that this experiment, this vision that Nico had for the team was already done. There's a really good chance that it was already over before it started when that news came out. And I guess because Dallas played kind of well sometimes, occasionally against some bad teams down the stretch, because they kept playing and fighting, because then it tanked. The opinion changed a little bit on that, but that was just the reality. The hardest thing to do in team building is to try to replace an All-NBA player and have that be your focus for half of a season. It's really hard to do both things. Dallas as a roster needs to get better if they're going to be anything more. I thought that if they'd stayed healthy after the trade, I thought they were probably going to be in the second round, maybe the conference finals if everything broke right. I thought it was going to be a pretty good team. What I saw from the team as they kind of half got healthy, although Kyrie obviously helped so much.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw from the team gave me more concerns than I had initially about the trade. Just immediate on-court fit. We're not relitigating everything, but just
Sure.
immediate on-court fit. I had some current concerns from what I saw from this team on the court. But yeah, the hardest thing to do is boost and bolster those concerns, because right now this team is probably going to win a first-round series. If they had stayed healthy, they probably would have won a first-round series and got into the second round. Again, depends on how things break. But you need to improve based off where that team was. And you also have to replace Kyrie. And
this is just to make the play-in or the playoffs, not to win a title, which is
Correct.
their goal. I mean, they're obviously very far from that, but just to make the play-in, I think they have to get better because Kyrie's going to be out.
Yeah.
For sure. You have to have a fighting chance in the regular season to make sure that you don't slip too far behind. And when Kyrie comes back, you can't be 2 games under 500. You can't be 7 games, behind the 6th seed. Or 9 games behind the 6th seed. Like that, these things need to be in sight for Kyrie's sake as much as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want him coming back to a situation where it all rests on his shoulder to save it. That's the worst possible scenario for a player who, I think that's a big reason why when you go back to Jamal Murray, I don't think Kyrie's going to miss the whole year. I expect him back at some point in the season. All the reporting seems to indicate that. But players have skipped out the whole year because they don't want to ease back. They can't ease back into a situation where all the expectation is on them for the salvation and the redemption of a regular season that's not going as well as it should be. And so having somebody who can address that might mean that you can't improve on a team that needs improvement, based off what it is healthy. Because what it is healthy is not a championship team as it stands right now, in my opinion. And it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to do as a front office.
And now sometimes saying that, you might have egg on your face because, for example, the 6 and 7 seed in the West just won the first round, Golden State and Minnesota, and they're playing each other. So one of them is going to go to the conference finals. So you could say, well, all you have to do is get in the dance, which I agree. If you make the playoffs, you have a chance to win the title. But both 8 seeds got swept. And there's no reason to believe OKC will be markedly worse next year. And so you can't just be 8th. You have to be at least 7th, which means you have to finish 7th or 8th.
And ideally at least 5th.
Don't worry about numbers. 6 and 7 was basically 4. They all had
they had the same record.
Almost the same record.
Yeah.
So you got to be.
But you have to finish 7th or 8th in order to not be 8th.
Correct.
And you don't want to be easing back into it while playing in the first round against OKC.
Yeah.
It's tough, but there's more. There's a lot more to talk about.
We'll get to you on the other side of the break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Where the Mavericks stand financially, and what does it mean for them as they try to improve this team going forward this summer? All that and more coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
But first, let me tell you about Sleeper. It's the best fantasy app out there. I've spent much of the last week and a half doing Dynasty rookie drafts, but you can also have some fun by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will record more or less in their projected stats each and every night. They even do series averages now, so you can say, hey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think he's going to average more than 28.5 points for the whole series, or whatever the case may be. I missed my chance on Cavs-Pacers. What a game one that was. Shocking dub for the Pacers. Holy moly, these guys got it. But you can also play game 2. You can play game 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can play any sport, anytime, every single day on Sleeper. So if you want to play along, download Sleeper today. Use promo code DLLS Mavs. Play $5 to get $55 in free plays to use anytime. Does not need to be your first play. Just check the terms and conditions before you do. It's available in more than 25 states, including Texas, so make sure it's available where you are, and download Sleeper today.
Make sure you get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. You can do that with our friends at Shady Rays. They have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Shades that have durable frames and crystal clear optics as well, making them the perfect choice for all of your outdoor adventures. Hundreds of options to choose from as well, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. And plus, they have some in your team's favorite colors as well. If your shades go missing, don't worry about it, or if they take an unexpected hit, they've got the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements, so don't worry about it if you break them or you lose your pair of Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people today. As we have an honest conversation here today on the DLLS Mavs podcast about the state of the Mavericks and why they've got to move with a sense of urgency going forward, let's take a look at the financial situation of where this team is and what they have available to it going into the summer. When you start looking at what this team has, some of the free agents include Spencer Dinwiddie, Dante Exum, Kyrie Irving has a near $44 million player option. Dwight Powell also has a player option as well. Kessler Edwards is a restricted free agent, and Kai Jones is an unrestricted free agent going into this summer for this team. A couple of guys that are extension eligible include P.J. Washington, who is eligible for what is a 4-year, $89.2 million extension. This according to Bobby Marks at ESPN. Now, he would be eligible for that beginning on August 29th. Of course, Washington had a career averaging over 32 minutes per game, had 17 games of at least 10 rebounds or more. Other extension candidates include Daniel Gafford and Dwight Powell beginning as soon as July 9th. That kind of gets us to where the Mavericks can stand a little bit financially, but let's dive into it a little bit more with this team.
Yeah, and this is the tough thing because, again, we're talking about replacing Kyrie, and, you know, I want to reinforce they cannot stand pat. You have to add talent. You have to add players. I mean, they were playing 3 two-way players as like part of their rotation down the stretch while they're trying to make the playoffs. So you have to add guys. But as it stands right now, you know, unless Kyrie takes a pretty hefty pay cut on his extension, which there's no reason for him to, the Mavs, according to Spotrac, are $800,000 below the first apron right now going into the offseason, and that does not include the first-round pick that they have, where if they win the lottery, it'll be much more. But even right now, the 11th or 12th pick in the draft would pay around $3-4 million. So you're already over the first apron, and that means, unless you shed money, and that means you can't use the mid-level exception, You can't use any exceptions. I don't
even
think
the small.
Yeah, I don't think they have the
exception.
biannual.
Because,
no taxpayer.
If Dallas stays under the first apron, they're going to have the taxpayers mid-level, which is not as large as the non-taxpayers mid-level.
Yeah.
I think the best case scenario for them, even when they shed salary, is that they're going to have the taxpayers mid-level.
Yeah, which is around it always goes up. It's around somewhere around like $6 million, which is basically what Jaden Hardy makes. So you can salary dump Jaden Hardy and then just sign someone, but you have to shed even more money because that pick also counts against the cap. But being above the first apron also means you can't do sign-in trades, which is that's their most realistic way to acquire a free agent. That means you can't send out cash in trades, so you can't buy draft picks.
5.7 million.
5.7. Okay.
On the projected taxpayers mid-level exception. Last year, Dallas used chunks of the non-taxpayers mid-level exception to sign Najee Marshall, and did they work somebody else into that space? I don't remember.
I think
they ended up not doing that.
Yes, I think they needed that money for the Clay trade.
Correct.
But the Clay trade hard capped the Mavs last year, which is why they couldn't sign players, down the stretch this season. They were so banged up they couldn't add anybody. They were hard capped at the first apron. Now the Mavs are not hard capped at the first apron right now, but if they do a sign and trade or send out cash in a trade or anything, then they would be. And right now they only have 13 players under contract for next season, not including the draft pick that they're getting, and they're already at the apron. So they're in a really, really tough spot to where it's very likely they're only going to have minimums to sign guys. And tactically, that's a big problem because, the trade-off that they made trading Luka, who's a playmaker, for AD, who is a play finisher for the most part. AD, you're not running offense through him necessarily in a way that he can be like a connector and a scorer. He's just more of a scorer for the most part. The Mavs ball movement stagnated. Also you have lesser playmakers making decisions, which means there's going to be less, good playmaking. And so the offense became very stale. That's probably going to be the case with minimum guys. And that to me is like the more troubling issue is, okay, even if the Mavs recognize we have to get better, but they have very limited means to do so. The one good thing that Nico and this regime have demonstrated over the years that he's been in charge is that—
Very curious what you're about to say. Go ahead. I have an idea as well.
They can look at a situation and say, this guy is not good enough. We need to get better.
Sure.
But often
Grant Williams in half a season.
Yeah, half a season. I mean, it was a great judgment call, honestly, because PJ is a much better player than Grant Williams. But in order to make those, I mean, that's more than an incremental improvement. But in order to make that improvement at one spot in your roster, it's cost them a first-round pick every time.
Mm-hmm.
Now they only have, unless they trade this year's, they only have 2 future picks that they can trade. So that's 2 small improvements or one kind of big improvement, but I think they're more than one kind of big improvement away.
Sure.
Kyle Kuzma cost 2 first-round picks. They're more than a Kyle Kuzma away. So, Tim, what do they do? I'm curious to hear yours and KG's thoughts on this.
Love you too, Jalen. Shout out. We got a VIP in the chat.
Oh, Jonathan, what's up,
we
man?
We don't need to dox him. We don't need to dox him. Jalen,
Okay.
you're just a good person.
Yes. What I was going to say is the one thing that the Dallas front office has going for them this summer. In all likelihood, Giannis, Kevin Durant, and potentially more moves falling out from that are Giannis and KD are going to get moved. There's going to be more moves falling out from that. The best way for Dallas to improve their roster, I think, is that they're going to get involved. All of those trades, KD trade will be a 3-team, could be a 4-team, could be a 5-team. Same's going to go for Giannis. Pretty much any major trade in the NBA at this point is a 3+ team trade. There's a lot of cap reasons for it. We need to get Yossi on at some point and kind of go back through cap stuff. But Dallas is going to have the ability to attach themselves, or they're going to try. I can promise you. Every team in the NBA is going to be trying. But Dallas is going to try to attach themselves to some of these bigger 3-team deals and players that if they can offer maybe that $6 million Jaden Hardy contract all of a sudden is needed to make a trade work.
And you have expirings too.
Yeah, they have expirings. That's going to be the best way, and that stuff's so hard to predict because you just don't know what the conversations are happening, where teams are going. But that's the one advantage Dallas has because it's not going to be free agency. They don't have free agency. They don't have money. They don't have cap space. They don't have a lot to they don't have that much to trade
external tools to improve
to go make their trade.
Well, and that's where I just went into theater mode on accident. I hate when I do that on YouTube. Smoke Show makes a comment, trade strengths for weakness. So that is one way, definitely. Like if you're overloaded at one position, then you could say, okay, well, let's find a team that needs a center, like the Lakers, for example. And there are others that really need a center, and then we can get a guard or a wing from them. But the problem with that, so right now the Mavs have AD, Lively, and Gafford. And my worry, I think Gafford on an expiring deal, I think he's a really good player, and I think on an expiring deal, great value and all that stuff. If you trade Gafford for a guard, you get a guard, which is great. But then Lively and AD both have had such injury struggles throughout their career that you become awfully thin in the front court. And that could be, then you're having to sign a minimum backup, which could be Kai Jones. Like, is Kai Jones a season-long backup center? Like, is he that good? Maybe. But it's a gamble either way. So it's like, that's a big cause of concern for me, is that their best, their area of strength, they kind of have to keep that a strength because that is now the identity of their team. And if you trade size for guards, then you don't have much size anymore. And it's like, well, then now you're hoping that neither of them get hurt, which is just, it's like you're playing whack-a-mole almost is what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that concerns me going into next year is that you're asking Anthony Davis without Kyrie Irving for a good chunk of next year to be the number one option. And at this stage in his career, by the time we get to next March, Anthony Davis is going to be 33 years old. And when you look at the extensive injury history that he has had, even if you go back to the time when he was in New Orleans as the number one option, he only led the Pelicans to the playoffs one time as the number one option for that team. And we're talking about a season that was back in 2017, 2018, alongside DeMarcus Cousins and, Rajon Rondo. Drew Holiday was also on the team.
The GOAT, Drew Holiday.
Yeah, on that team as well. So asking that player at this stage in his career to carry the entire load, both offensively and defensively, to try and stem the tide until Kyrie Irving comes back with the limited roster that they have, I think is going to be fairly difficult for him to do, even if you get the ideal health from him throughout the course of the first, 45 to 50 games where he's available, for 80% of those games, to get them in a position to be afloat by the time Kyrie Irving gets back. That's my biggest concern, is having to ask Anthony Davis to shoulder all of that load with the roster that's in front of him to try and keep pace in the West that we know is going to be difficult.
That's the thing, look at all the teams that are left in the playoffs, like, OKC, Shea, Golden State, Steph, Minnesota, Ant, Pacers, Halliburton, Cavs, Donovan Mitchell, like Boston, Tatum, and more. Like all of these guys, their best player, like the centerpiece of their offense, can pass, dribble, shoot.
Yeah,
they can do everything. And AD, AD can kind of shoot and he can kind of pass and he can kind of dribble, but like you can't just ISO him and then create anything. With Kyrie, that is possible, but again, Kyrie's going to be out. So like everything is just going to be hard until Kyrie comes back, and everything is going to be taxing. Yeah. And what happens whenever a team with a lousy training staff gets taxed? Well, we just saw it. It was not good, So it's such a concern for me. And so I'm not saying this again, none of that take was like, I'm just a Nico hater that's butthurt about the Luka trade. Like I've said before, if you're going to trade Luka, just get more back. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it's because of I'm very worried. I'm just concerned. I'm looking around the West and thinking, man, Portland, San Antonio are going to be better. Phoenix is going to be aggressive. Whether it makes them better or not, who knows? But that's three teams that could potentially win more games next season. And the Mavs are already 10th. Their margin for error does not exist. If they do not get better, they might get worse.
Yeah.
They probably will get worse.
Smoke Show says draft another center if you end up trading Gafford. And
are there bigs in that? I guess I don't even know.
There's a couple players kind of in that range. I think that's plausible. Obviously, you're now in a position where you're not drafting best player available. You're drafting to fit team need, which is unfortunate. But a lot of teams do that, and a lot of teams are in this situation. Just noting that it is a self-graded situation. But yeah, I do think that moving Gafford for a guard, even if it ends up being Gafford goes somewhere, I don't know, Colin Sexton is like a 3-team. Maybe they somehow get Colin Sexton, and then they're sending picks that way, and then the team that's getting Gafford is sending also a pick to Utah, something like that. But then you start thinking about who needs centers, and we know Lakers. Everybody knows the Lakers.
Sure.
Cleveland, no. Boston, no. New York, no. Indiana, no. Milwaukee, don't know what they're doing. Probably not, though. Probably not a win now, 26-year-old guy. Detroit, no. Orlando, no. Miami, no. Atlanta,
Chicago?
No. Chicago. Chicago does need a center. Chicago does need a center. that's possible. Would you take Vooch back for, just as a regular season backup option?
I would love that.
I mean, that'd be awesome.
Some scenario where
one West team that would be Portland because of Ayton's situation. But I don't know if I want to. Again, Portland is one of the teams that could pass you. Do you want to help them? No, I don't.
And they got Donovan Clingan, who I'm sure they're trying to get some more out of.
Yeah, true. Gafford as a backup, but again, I'm not helping you. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
We're competitors.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave me alone.
Help out Western Conference teams.
Yeah, and you do the same thing in the West, and it's the same situation outside of the Lakers, and then the Suns, and again, we'll see what happens with the Suns. I could see the Suns maybe making a play for that. If I'm the Lakers, I think they'd be better served looking for like a Goga Batadze.
Steven Adams
like
maybe
that.
as a backup, maybe as an option potentially. Who knows? I'm sure Mavericks fans would not be thrilled if the Mavericks did another trade with the Los Angeles Lakers, but it could net them some playmaking.
I don't want to help them get better ever.
That's I'm sure a lot of Mavericks fans will feel the same way given the situation.
I want to be sassy for 1 second. So Darius says, "Be a man and apologize to Nico." No. He said Luka was the worst defender in the playoffs. Luka did not do very well defensively in that series. That is for sure. You're right on that. But the Mavs weren't in the playoffs at all. So
Cook.
You do make a trade to get better. The Mavs got worse. The Lakers made that trade and got better. I would love to have playoff complaints about the team, but the Mavs weren't in the playoffs. We're talking about how they could potentially get the playoffs next year after they were in the finals last year. So it is kind of a self-own to be like, Luka wasn't very good in the playoffs while the Mavs weren't there. But I want them to be in the playoffs. I do. I think it'd be great.
I want them to be great.
But they have to get better to get there.
They have to get better to get there. I mean, that is just the honest truth of where this team is from a financial perspective, a roster perspective, and where they are to try to get themselves. The goal is to win a championship. This team is far away from doing that. And if Nico Harrison believes in the vision that he has, there is work to do for him to get there. These are the tools that they have available to do it with. We'll see with this front office how creatively they can make that shake and to do it as quickly as they can to make sure that they maximize this window that they believe that they have.
Yeah, and AJ says, why not just forfeit the season? Damn, you guys are so negative. I mean, dude, they finished 10th. What do you mean? They finished 10th and their best player is going to miss half the year. We're laying out why they have to get better. They need to get better. Otherwise, the same thing is going to happen again.
If they run it back the exact same team, they're going to play half the season as a play-in team. So that means that they're going to be about a play-in team when Kyrie gets back.
And that's not good.
They have to, they have to scale and climb. So their roster needs to be better right now because we saw what the roster is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we saw it, and it wasn't good enough. Unless you think 10th is good enough, which I don't think you do. I think you want the Mavs to win the championship. I would love the Mavs to win every title every year. I want them to go 82-0. Every season, but unless they make moves to get better, they're not going to be at that level next season. I think it's important to say that, and I hope that they operate that way this summer.
Let's take our next break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. When we come back, we'll welcome in our national NBA insider, Marc Stein, a couple of assistants for the Mavericks, potentially candidates for this team's head coaching job. We'll discuss that next on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
Just like your favorite team needs a home court advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage, and Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. We've all been to those big box stores. You wander into endless aisles, and somehow you're taking all the material home. You're looking for an installer. You're, basically coordinating everything yourself, which is it's always the worst situation to be in. And yes, the big box store might have a flooring department, but who knows what that person specializes in, or maybe it's a little bit of everything. Maybe they're light bulbs tomorrow, their sinks yesterday. With Empire Today, they live and breathe flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. Schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DLLS listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code DLLS. Yes, you heard that right. A $350 discount with promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. Visit at EmpireToday/DLLS for full details.
It's game time here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. If you love going to concerts, sporting events, theater, you've got to use Game Time to get your tickets. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. With Game Time Picks, it allows you to filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I was able to use Game Time to get my tickets to go to WrestleMania a few weeks ago. I was able to use the panoramic seat view, so I knew exactly where I was going to sit before I purchased my ticket, and they've got all-in pricing, so I knew exactly what I was going to pay by the time I got to checkout, so I wasn't surprised by any hidden fees by the time I got ready to pay for my tickets. They got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. Remember, terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DLLS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, gentlemen?
Game time?
Who? Let's welcome in our national NBA insider. You can always dial up the Stein line at the Stein line. He, of course, is Marc Stein. Good afternoon, Marc. How are you?
Gents, good to be with you. Hope everybody's good.
Doing well.
All is well, Mark. Go Stars.
Go Stars. That's right. Go Stars. Hell of a weekend for them as they move on in the Western Conference playoffs. Busy weekend, of course, with the NBA playoffs. We're now fully into semifinal action in the East and the West. We're down to the final 8 teams in the East and West. Looking forward to continue playoff action. The Pacers getting a 1-0 series lead with their win yesterday over the Cleveland Cavaliers. But let's start with the Dallas Mavericks, of course, here because, Mark, in your latest piece over the weekend, there are a couple of assistants for this team in the Mavericks that could be in play for the Phoenix Suns head coaching job. What more can you tell us on that?
Yeah, so basically the Suns last week, they made their GM hire. They basically promoted Brian Gregory, who, I mean, it is an eye-raising move around the league, to say the least, because Brian Gregory has been in the league for not even a full year, and he is now the lead voice in the Suns front office.
So I think there's you guys hope for one of us to become a GM one day. Is that what you're saying?
You're only about 8 or 9 months behind in experience from the Suns' new hire. And look, he's close with Matt Ishbia. He actually coached Matt Ishbia when Matt Ishbia was a walk-on at Michigan State. He was on Tom Izzo's staff. So there is a huge connection there, but I'm sure you guys remember, you know, I reported a couple of weeks ago how the Suns have had a long-standing, strong interest in Bob Myers. People around the league were wondering, is Phoenix going to go out and make some kind of splashy hire? Because Matt Ishbia was very upfront at his end-of-season press conference saying that he's going to reorganize his front office. But in the end, the changes were very minor. James Jones moved to an advisor. Brian Gregory now put in charge, someone who has a long-standing relationship with Matt Ishbia, but very limited NBA experience. And then the strong messaging about the Suns coaching search for weeks since the season ended, almost a month now. You know, they fired Mike Budenholzer the day after the season. The word has been that Phoenix wants to hire a first-time coach. They want to hire a young coach who has not previously been a head coach. And as Super Kev rightly said, that means 2 Mavs, 2 members of Jason Kidd's staff are on the Suns list. The Suns have requested permission to speak with both Sean Sweeney, who of course is Jason Kidd's lead assistant, and Jared Dudley, who not only has a very prominent assistant role here in Dallas, but of course is a former Suns player, a popular former Suns player, and someone who played with Devin Booker and has a good relationship with Devin Booker, who we know is the star that the Suns want to keep. So it's very early in that process. The Suns are going to interview more than a dozen candidates. So those guys are on the initial list. We'll see how far they get in the search process. But yeah, Matt Ishbia has unlimited resources. I mean, he's just, his last 2 coaches, he fired both Mike Budenholzer and Frank Vogel after just 1 year into a 5-year deal. So we know he's not afraid to spend on coaches, but they're going in a different direction with a GM who is a relative unknown, someone close to the owner, and they want to hire a young coach. And it sounds like try to build a program, but of course the Suns don't have their draft picks, which makes building a program so difficult. And, you know, you guys were talking about I'm sure you guys have seen this stat, but in case you haven't, 7 of the 8 teams who made the second round last year are the same. 7 of the 8 teams from last year's second round are back in the second round, and the only exception is the Mavericks.
Don't say it. Oh God.
Yep.
But I think an even more painful stat to recite is the fact that when the regular season ended, the Suns were the only team in the league that weren't a top 10 seed in their conference, but also don't have their lottery pick.
It
Now,
could be worse, I guess.
Philly could end up on that list if the Sixers pick slips out of the top 6, and then they have to give it to Oklahoma City. But the Houston Rockets Game 7 home loss to Golden State is cushioned by the fact that they know they are getting the Suns lottery pick no matter what happens next Monday. So Suns are going through it too. Sixers are going through it too. And Tanner and I will have more on that later this week. That's all I can say.
It's going to be very interesting. The Rockets are a very, very intriguing team because of where they are with their young players, but also the fact that they've got the Phoenix Suns pick. How high could that pick climb by the time we get to the end of the lottery next week?
If Giannis plays in Texas, but it's not for the Mavs, I'm going to
What are you
say
gonna do?
so many mean things about the universe.
Look, man, between the Spurs and the Rockets, they've got the kind of picks and players that could make it happen. So
They'll wander into the floodplain and beg the rains to come. Oh God!
So yeah, those two teams are going to be very, very interesting to watch. Of course, Gregg Popovich having his transition press conference earlier today, where Mitch Johnson was officially introduced as their next head coach.
I actually want to say something about that because
Sure.
The reason I'm joining you guys via the magic of technology is because I got in late last night. But after Gregg Popovich was not expected to be at that press conference. That was a surprise appearance. So now I'm really just wishing that I would have flown straight to San Antonio. I really wish I could have been there to see that because I'm sure it was, Pop's appearance was not scheduled. The Spurs announced last week, of course, that Gregg Popovich was moving from nearly 30 years on the bench to president of basketball operations. And they scheduled the introductory press conference for Mitch Johnson today. But again, I don't think many people were expecting Pop to be there, and to that's really his first public appearance since he suffered the stroke before a game in early November. He ended up missing the final 76 games of the season, and that had to be quite a moment just to see him walk in that room. It's online. You can watch it, and I definitely think you should watch it. But to see him flanked by Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and to say a few words about Mitch Johnson taking over, pretty powerful stuff.
We got our National NBA insider Marc Stein joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. You can always dial with the Stein line at the Stein line. Let's stay in the Western Conference. Some buzz was about over the weekend where we saw Rob Pelinka, Luka Doncic, and apparently JJ Redick and Doncic's business manager Laura Bess-Seeger walking out of a restaurant for some potential business that was being conducted. What more can you tell us on that viral piece of video we saw this weekend?
Yeah, so I reported about this in my Sunday notebook, but just what it really illustrates and exemplifies, it just shows you the level of cooperation that we're already seeing between Team Luka and his new team. So the season ended Wednesday night. Friday night, they're huddling for this dinner, and the paparazzi caught them in LA because that's what happens in LA. They went to Craig's, which is a pretty famous spot in West Hollywood, and the footage of Luka is now back in Slovenia. Footage emerged today of him landing back home, so he is home. So that was clearly a meeting to for them to all huddle, coach, GM, and superstar to huddle before Luka returned back to Europe after a season that obviously ended way earlier than they were hoping, and a season that upended his life in ways that he couldn't have imagined. But pretty notable that, so quickly after the season that they're having that kind of summit. And again, I think the question obviously in LA is, are they going to sign him to an extension? Luka's not extension eligible until August 2nd. So the Lakers, even if Luka wanted to sign today, they have to wait 3 months. And anytime you have to wait, that naturally leads to questions and uncertainty. And, oh, man, is he going to sign it? Is he really going to sign? But based on everything I know, I think it's a pretty strong relationship between Luka and the Lakers. The Lakers are trying to do everything they can to convey to him that he is the face of the franchise there. He is the future of the franchise. And that was another thing. They lost Wednesday night. I was there Thursday morning. Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick right away had an end of season press conference that next morning. And if you heard the way Rob Pelinka spoke during that meeting, like, he's talking about the next decade of Lakers basketball. So at least outwardly, he's projecting a ton of confidence that they will get Luka signed in August as soon as he's eligible to do so. And really, the decision for Luka is going to be obviously the supermax that the Mavs could have given him. The Lakers can't offer him. So the most they can offer him is 4 years, basically $230 million. The question will be, do we see Luka do what Donovan Mitchell just did in Cleveland? Luka's got 7 years of service time, 1 year left on his current deal. Does he sign a 3-year extension with a player option in year 3? So just tack on 2 more years to his current deal. And then when he does the next one and he has 10 years of service time, he can get a larger percentage of the cap, up to 35% of the cap. So I imagine that the Donovan Mitchell route is something that's on the table and that he's looking at.
I just don't want the Lakers to get better. I'm a simple man. I hate the Lakers.
That's all you want? That's the only thing you want? I don't believe that.
It's not enough that I must win. They must lose.
Well, you and Nico are in agreement on that, it sounds like, when it comes to that. You can always dial up the Stein line with our national NBA insider, Marc Stein, at the Stein line. Mark, it's good to see you, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow here on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
I will be with you guys the next few days, and like I said, Tanner and I, we're working on something.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Mark.
So National NBA Center, Marc Stein, again, dial up the Stein line at the Stein line. Let's take our final break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. When we come back, let's preview the Western Conference semifinals. 4 terrific teams looking to put forward some fantastic basketball as we move toward the semifinals of the NBA playoffs. And we'll get to your super chats as well here on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
But first, Die Hard time. There's never been a better time to be a Die Hard. We got the Stars going to the second round. The Rangers just made some moves.
Oh, boy.
Telling Leody Taveras, get on out of here. Telling their offensive coordinator, get on out of here. Well, what the heck is going to happen with that? Jeff Wilson's got that covered. What the heck is going to happen with the Stars now that they might just never lose again? Sam Nestler's on that beat. How about the Mavs as they prepare for the lottery? And Tim, can you talk about your fan survey too?
Yeah. Fan survey is out. I'm gonna put it on the website and
what is it
other
about?
Places. So it's looking back more at the season and the season that was and the off season ahead. I know there's a wide range of fan opinions and what people feel about the team and what they want to listen to. But I already did a fandom survey, or more like one focused on the trade and the just all the emotions surrounding it. So this one is much more focused on the basketball court itself. Of course, there's a couple questions that kind of still get into excitement and emotions. It's a fan survey after all. I try to ask you questions about what you feel, because you in the survey is the protagonist, and I think that's important. It's part of our mission. And you can make it more of your mission if you sign up to be a diehard.
You're damn right, Tim.
We're going to be posting the results, but I'll make sure that anybody who participates in the poll can see the survey.
Well, we'll talk about it on the show as well, because we're live on YouTube 5 days a week.
That's right.
So scan the QR code, link in the description below to become a diehard. You get to read the whole website. You get a free shirt right when you sign up. You get to join the Discord. Stars Discord is absolutely on cloud 9 right now. It's incredible. You get a physical diehard card as well. and you get a discount on other merch and gear and all sorts of bennies. It's great stuff. So thank you for becoming a part of our community, however you support us, whether it's on YouTube or on the site as well. And back to the show.
Let's finish up here on the DLLS Mavs podcast, talking some playoff basketball. Before we do, let's get to our super chat that we have here on our show today. Shout out to Ozzy D with the $4.99 super chat. Bobby's take isn't controversial. We're being forced to rely on a 33-year-old small point guard coming off an ACL tear. Jamal Murray was 24 when he tore his.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt that Kyrie will approach his rehab with the tenacity of, unparalleled, honestly. Like, Kyrie loves playing basketball more than most people like breathing. So I have full faith that he's going to return to as close to his form as he possibly can, as quickly as he possibly can. The issue, and I saw Tim, you were talking about this in the chat too, is how do the Mavs survive his absence? And then also, it's not just surviving his absence, it's managing the injuries that other guys will inevitably experience throughout the season. Whenever you're down one of your two superstars, that automatically puts you at a huge disadvantage and reduces your margin for error. So when it's already razor thin, then you can't withstand many more surprises. So I'm worried about that.
Should I do the math real quick? So let's say Kyrie, I was doing this in the chat, but let's say Kyrie misses 50 games, comes back game 51.
Which would be a very fast recovery.
It would be a fast recovery. It's plausible. Can Dallas, so those first 50 games, Anthony Davis, let's say he's largely healthy the whole time. He's the star of the team. You've got somebody else. You've got another player that, isn't Kyrie, isn't anything close to Kyrie, but is at least available around to help mitigate some of that. You got Brandon Williams who, keeps going. I still think that team is probably about a 45-win team, without Kyrie. Is that fair? Do you think they could be more than that?
Depends.
It's possible.
That's a little optimistic, but it
I
depends.
think it's a little more optimistic.
Depends who you play and, how many back-to-backs.
They kind of need a backloaded schedule, but on the flip side, they also need a front-loaded schedule.
Because you want to win, yeah.
I'm more closer to 40 to 42.
Yeah, I think optimistically this team could win 45 at a 45 win pace if they make a replacement level move, like a point guard who can semi fill in. If they just have a solid offseason, they get that guard who can kind of do both. Not super well, but he can kind of do both. He can bridge that gap till Kyrie gets back. I think 45 wins is doable for this team. And they just manufacture offense somehow, some way. Derek Lively, if he's back and healthy, that makes a big difference. I think it's lost how much his absence was affected the team. That was as much as anything. That was a huge part of this. But that still means the 8th seed last season in the West won 48 games.
Yeah.
So Dallas has to go 21-11. That's a 54-win pace. From the moment Kyrie gets back, you have to be winning 2 out of 3 games. Not quite, but close to 2 out of 3 games. Just to get to 48 wins, which gets you to the 8th seed, because I think the West is going to be just as good. If the West is a little bit easier, that helps a lot. Giannis might get traded to the West. I don't think the West is going to be easier.
Stop, man. Stop that right now.
I don't think the West is going to be easier. So you're still looking for 48 wins because you need at least the 8th seed. You cannot set yourself up for the 9th and 10th seed to coast into the first round series, probably against the reigning champs, Oklahoma City Thunder. That is not setting yourself up for success. Maybe you can build into things, but you can't have it that way. So you've got to get to 48 wins. So you've got to win. If you're 27-23, that's the 45 win pace. 27-23 at the 50 game mark. You have to win. My math is slipping. It's
a number of games.
I just had it. Here it is.
21-11 is 48 and 34.
Or 27-23. So you got to win 21-11 to get to 48 in the 32 games that Kyrie is going to be on your team as constructed, as the vision is.
But
he's going to miss back-to-backs, and unless he is immediately looking like himself, or something close to himself. Because, as we've said, a lot of players come back from ACLs 12 months after, but they don't look like themselves till 18. I am going to assume that Kyrie is going to look like Kyrie again.
Dude, he's a stud.
He's awesome.
He's going to be so good.
And based off everything I know about him, I expect him to be back something very close to his form. It might not happen this year, but let's say it does. Let's say he looks awesome. He comes back and he looks awesome. He's still going to miss some games in there. So what you're really realistically thinking about is like Kyrie's going to be available for like 23 of those 32 remaining games. You need to win 21 of them. You can win some games without Kyrie. You were winning games before Kyrie. But it's all just the more you think about this, it's very, very difficult.
It's a very narrow path.
It's a narrow path. I think that
Yes.
there's not a lot of room for error. There's not a
Yes.
lot of margins here. And those margins do not include scenarios where Anthony Davis goes down for 3 weeks. Derek Lively, other people who have proven some level of injury concern continue having injury concerns. I think if everything goes right for the Dallas Mavericks next season, they have and everything goes, we'll see how this offseason goes. But if they have a good offseason and everything goes right next year, I think that this is a pretty good team that could maybe even be in the conference finals. But there are so many things that have to go right. And I'm just very, very worried about that. It's a very difficult position to be in. Unfortunately, Dallas is not an OKC that can survive the loss of Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren for half the year. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, the depth of these teams in the Western Conference is one of the hallmarks that you get deeper and deeper as the playoffs go on. We saw how Minnesota was able to utilize that depth against the Lakers, especially with their physicality and size to take them out. As we got the final 8 teams in the East and the West, Thunder versus Nuggets. Game 1 of that series is tonight. Oklahoma City, 9.5-point favorite at home over the Denver Nuggets in game 1 of their series tonight. And we've also got game 1 of the Knicks and Celtics Eastern Conference semifinals. Celtics 9.5-point favorite tonight at home over the New York Knicks. Of course, you got the Cavaliers and the Pacers. Cavs lose game 1 to Tyrese Halliburton and Indiana Pacers. Really nice win for the Pacers yesterday as they take game 1 and they steal home court advantage over the Cavaliers. They lead that series 1-0. And then the Timberwolves and the Warriors. The Warriors taking out the Houston Rockets last night in what was not a great offensive performance at all from the Rockets. Buddy Hield went 9 of 11 from the three-point line last night as the Warriors win game 7.
Forget.
Yeah, Buddy Hield was fantastic for them. Timberwolves, though, 7.5-point favorite in game 1. That'll be tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m.
Celtics in 5, Thunder in 5, Cavs in
Thunder in
7.
Oh, Thunder in 5. Okay.
Cavs in 7. Okay.
Wolves in 6.
I'm gonna go Pacers in 6.
Oh, okay.
Boston in 5. Thunder in 5. And then Wolves are starting on the road, right?
They are. No. They're at home. They're the 6th.
Yeah, they're at home.
Yeah, they're.
Wolves are 6.
And that series
Okay.
is every other day.
Oh man,
Every other day.
Yeah, I don't know. 5 might be optimistic. I'll say Wolves in 6 to be safe.
I'm gonna go Wolves in 5. Those legs are tired. I think the Warriors'
That team
legs
is old,
Yeah,
dude.
team is old, man.
That's an old ass team.
the Rockets softened up the Warriors quite a bit for the Timberwolves going into that series.
I would have liked the Warriors a lot more if they had wrapped that series up a little quicker.
Yeah, they were up 3-1 and allowed that thing to go to 7 games. I think the Wolves, with that size, physicality, and
if you wrap it up quicker, you have more games in between. It's not just the days on the front end; it's the days on the back end.
Yeah,
you would have saved yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Warriors in 5.
You mean Wolves or Warriors?
I'm sorry, Wolves in 5.
Oh, okay, I was
Wolves
gonna be
in
like,
5.
damn.
Man, this
Yeah,
is some ancient stuff. The Warriors fighting Wolves.
Oh wow.
That's happened to me in a civilization game or two.
Yeah, and then Irish people fighting pants.
That's right.
In the other conference.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, they hate wearing them. That's why
Yeah,
why they got the oh my god, I forgot the name. The skirts the dresses they
Kilts?
wear.
Kilts?
Thank you.
Isn't that Scottish people?
Scottish. Yeah.
Sorry, UK fans.
But yeah, I'm gonna take the Celtics in 5 as well over the Knicks. With all due respect to Jalen Brunson, who was fantastic in that series against the Detroit Pistons. Let's get to Jonathan W's $1.99 super chat. Nico will go get Matisse Thybulle because defense.
Former future Mav entering the last year of his contract.
To an offer sheet.
Yep.
They did.
Yeah, and
They did for the mid-level.
Who's got
And-
the spin, by the way? Just make sure.
Yeah, no, I got the Tankathon
just
spin
checking.
right now.
all right.
I think they've moved past that's an archetype for them, but I think Caleb Martin is.
They're Matisse. Yeah.
It's possible Caleb Martin is getting moved, salary reasons, stuff like that. But I think he was, as time has gone on, I think he was traded for to be on this team. And I think he fills that archetype. So I don't think they're looking at a Tybull type. Also, you've seen like
Derek Jones kind of fills that
like
too.
Chris Dunn, one of the best perimeter guards in the entire NBA, and he really struggled to play in the postseason. Like
I love Chris Dunn so much.
Derek Jones Jr. Same thing.
God,
Let's do the Tankathon.
All right, Tankathon spin. The Mavs have not moved up yet. Will they today? How about this? The number 1 pick, the Houston Rockets.
Oh!
The number 2 pick, New Orleans. Number 3, Charlotte. Number 4, the Sacramento Kings climb all the way up from 13th to get to the top 4. The Mavs actually fall to 12. So that means we've done, I believe, 11 spins.
That's right.
The Mavs have moved up 0, stayed the same 9, and moved down twice.
Yikes.
So things are going great over here.
Draft lottery 1 week from today, boys and girls.
Watch along.
That's right. We appreciate you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Appreciate our guy Tanner making us look good and sound good as always. Thank you, sir. We'll be back tomorrow at 12 p.m. That is our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Krell. That is our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here at 12 p.m. on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good and enjoy the rest of your day.
See ya.
Peace.
Oh, my God.
We all silly like the mayor.